I found out my life was over while still wearing my dress blues. The courtroom smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee, the kind of smell that sticks to your skin long after you leave. I stepped inside, boots hitting the floor in a sharp, hollow rhythm that seemed too loud. At the front, the judge sat bored behind the bench, flipping through a thick folder. It took me a second to realize my name was stamped on the cover. "Mr. Rowe," the judge said without looking up, "we're just reviewing the final documentation." I nodded, not trusting my voice. My commanding officer had called this morning, said there was an urgent administrative matter that needed my signature. I thought it was about my upcoming deployment. God, how stupid I was. The clerk handed me a sheet of paper, black ink, official seal, cold words that sliced through my ribs like a knife. Petition for divorce. On the grounds of adultery, asset misappropriation, and security violations, filed by Cassandra Rowe. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just stared at it, feeling my pulse thudding in my temples like distant artillery fire. At the bottom of the page, under the signature line, was a photocopy of my name, except it wasn't my signature. Not even close. It was a clumsy forgery, the kind of sloppy imitation you'd expect from a teenager trying to ditch school, not from a woman I'd trusted with every piece of my soul. The judge flipped another page. Financial records have been submitted. Bank transfers authorized by Mr. Rowe to external offshore accounts. I hadn't authorized anything. I swallowed, my throat dry as ash, and forced myself to speak. "Your Honor, there must be some mistake." The judge finally looked up. His expression was clinical, detached, like a man examining a dead bug under glass. "That's a matter for your counsel, Mr. Rowe. For today, we are simply processing the injunction to freeze assets pending investigation." Investigation. The word hung between us, heavier than the oak paneling lining the walls. Behind me, the doors creaked open. I didn't have to turn around to know it was her. Cassandra wore the same perfume she always did, something sharp and sweet and utterly fake. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her heels clicked against the tile, each step a nail. In the coffin, I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the polished brass plate above the judge's bench. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, a mask of serene detachment. Not even a flicker of guilt. Next to her, my daughter Madison walked in, arms crossed, eyes hard. She wouldn't meet my gaze. My stomach twisted. Brandon wasn't there. My son, the one I thought still believed in me, was hundreds of miles away, probably completely unaware that his family had detonated itself in a courthouse while he was pulling guard duty at West Point. I handed the paper back to the clerk, my fingers steady despite the roaring in my ears. "Do you wish to contest the petition at this time?" the judge asked. I thought about it, thought about standing up, shouting the truth, demanding justice, fighting like hell. But Cassandra's cold gaze pinned me in place. "There are battles you lose before you even lift your sword." "No, Your Honor," I said quietly. "Not at this time." The gavel fell with a sharp crack, final and absolute. I didn't look at Cassandra as I walked out of the courtroom. I didn't look at Madison. I didn't look at the judge, the clerk, the security guards watching me with thinly disguised pity. I kept my head high, my spine straight, my fists clenched so tight my nails bit into my palms. Outside, the sky was a brutal shade of blue, cloudless and indifferent. The air smelled like exhaust and wet concrete. I loosened my tie, feeling it choke me. The courthouse steps stretched out before me like an executioner's march. Every step down was a burial, not for Cassandra, not for Madison, not for the life I thought I had, for the man I used to be. And somewhere deep in my chest, under the stunned silence and the burn of betrayal, something colder than rage began to take root. I didn't know it yet, but I was already planning my revenge. I didn't drive home. I didn't even start the truck. I just sat behind the wheel, staring through the windshield at nothing, feeling the heavy thud of my own heartbeat against my ribs. A gust of wind rolled a crumpled fast food bag across the parking lot, spinning it like a cheap carnival prize. Somewhere a siren wailed, but it sounded far away, muffled, like I was underwater. I loosened my collar and unpinned the brass nameplate from my uniform, letting it clatter onto the passenger seat. "Rowe," it said in sharp, proud letters. Now it looked foreign, like it belonged to someone else. My hands found the steering wheel and gripped it, not turning the key, not moving, just holding on because it was the only solid thing left. 10 minutes. Past maybe 20. The world outside kept spinning. Cars pulled in and out of the courthouse lot. People hustled past with coffee cups and legal folders, but I sat frozen, a living fossil trapped in amber. Eventually, my fingers ached from the pressure. I forced them to let go. I reached across the seat, lifted the thermos I'd brought that morning. It was still half full, lukewarm now, but I drank it down anyway. Bitter, stale, no better than motor oil. I didn't even wince. A pigeon landed on the hood, bobbing its head like it was mocking me. I stared at it, unblinking, until it flew off, leaving a splatter of white across the dusty paint. Somewhere in my mind, a voice said, "Move." But the rest of me didn't listen. Instead, I leaned back against the cracked leather seat and closed my eyes. Not to sleep, there was no sleep left in me, but to press everything down. Smother it. Wrap it up tight so it couldn't tear through me and leave me broken on the asphalt. I thought about the medal ceremony 2 months ago, how Cassandra had smiled for the cameras, squeezed my hand just tightly enough to look convincing. Madison had stood on the edge of the crowd, fiddling with her phone. Brandon had been the only real thing in the picture, straight-backed and proud, clapping harder than anyone else. I squeezed my eyes shut tighter. The thermos rolled off the seat and hit the floor with a dull thud, but I didn't move to pick it up. Let it stay there. Let everything fall apart if it wanted to. The courthouse door opened again in the distance, and for a second, instinct told me to look up. See if she was there. See if she would chase me down the steps, call my name, tell me. It was all some horrible mistake, but nothing came, only the sound of traffic, the low grumble of an 18-wheeler shifting gears as it roared past on the street behind me. I let out a slow breath, more sigh than exhale, and reached into the glove compartment, pulled out the penknife I always kept there, the one Brandon had given me for Christmas when he was 12. He'd saved up his allowance for months to buy it, thought it was the coolest thing a dad could have. I turned it over in my hand, feeling the worn edges, the smoothness of the handle. A useless little thing. Couldn't even cut rope cleanly, but I tucked it into my jacket pocket anyway, not because it would save me, because it reminded me that once upon a time, someone had believed I was worth fighting for. The clock on the dash ticked forward another minute. The courthouse emptied. The sun dipped lower, throwing long shadows across the cracked pavement. Finally, with movements that felt detached, like I was piloting a machine instead of my own body, I shifted into gear and pulled away. No music. No destination, just the hum of the engine and the long, empty road stretching ahead. Somewhere down that road there would be a plan. Somewhere down that road there would be a reckoning. But not yet. For now, there was only silence, and I let it wrap around me like armor. The first punch always lands before you see it coming. It wasn't like I didn't have warnings. Looking back, the signs were stitched all over the fabric of my life, red threads running through a tapestry I had been too proud, or too stupid, to notice unraveling. The radio crackled with static as I drove, headlights slicing through the early evening haze. I wasn't thinking about where I was going. I just let the memories pull me under like riptides. I remembered the nights when Cassandra used to leave the porch light on, waiting for me to come home from late shifts. I'd pull into the driveway, tired enough to fall asleep behind the wheel, and see that little beacon glowing through the dark. She'd be in the kitchen, barefoot, hair pulled up in a messy knot, stirring something in a battered old pot. She used to hum when she cooked, some off-key country song about loving a soldier. I remembered how she'd stand on tiptoe just to kiss me, even when I smelled like motor oil and gunpowder. And Madison used to chase me through the living room, shrieking with laughter, her hair flying behind her like a comet tail. She'd wait for me by the window when I was late, her breath fogging up the glass, drawing little hearts with her fingers. Those images hit harder than any courtroom gavel. At a red light, I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. The leather was cool against my skin, grounding me for a moment that I desperately needed. When had that light in the kitchen gone dark? When had the porch been left cold, the curtains drawn? Somewhere between the deployments and the promotions, between the birthday parties I missed and the anniversaries celebrated alone, we had drifted. Or maybe she had let go first, and I'd been too busy clinging to the idea of us to notice I was clinging to nothing at all. The light changed. I didn't move. I thought about the last family barbecue before Brandon left for West Point. Cassandra had floated through the crowd, laughing too brightly, drinking too much. Madison barely spoke to me that day, glued to her phone texting someone who made her smile in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in years. When the cake came out, Cassandra had leaned in close and whispered, "Don't forget to make a wish." I'd looked at her, then really looked, and felt the hollow behind her eyes. Like she'd already packed her bags and just hadn't bothered to tell me yet. But I smiled anyway. Cut the cake, made my wish. God, what a fool. The honk of a car behind me snapped me back. I lifted my foot off the brake and rolled forward, the truck, shuddering slightly, as if it hated the road as much as I did. Somewhere along the way, Cassandra stopped humming in the kitchen. Somewhere along the way, Madison stopped hugging me goodnight. It hadn't been a sudden betrayal, it was a slow bleed, 1,000 tiny cuts that I hadn't noticed until I was already drowning in them. I turned onto a side street, letting the truck wind through dark, empty neighborhoods, the kind where Christmas lights still hung even though December had long since bled into January. They swung in the breeze, broken and blinking, sad reminders of better days. Funny, isn't it? How you can lose everything without anyone ever raising their voice. No shouting, no slammed doors, just silence, just distance, just cold, deliberate forgetting. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles whitening against the leather. They hadn't betrayed me all at once. They'd simply stopped remembering I existed. And now, standing here in the ashes of what used to be my life, I finally understood something they had figured out a long time ago. Some things don't explode. They erode, piece by piece, until there's nothing left to salvage. It didn't happen with shouting matches or broken dishes. It happened in the smallest ways, the kinds of things you only recognize after it's already too late. Cassandra started locking her phone when she used to leave it face up on the kitchen counter without a second thought. At first I told myself it was nothing. New job contacts, privacy, normal stuff. But normal doesn't smell like guilt. She used to wear that faded denim jacket I gave her for our 5th anniversary everywhere. School functions, grocery runs, rainy Saturdays. One day, it vanished without a word, replaced by designer brands I never saw her buy, Madison too. She stopped asking me to proofread her college essays, started disappearing behind slammed bedroom doors, earbuds jammed deep into her ears like armor. Whenever I asked how classes were going, she'd shrug, say fine, and that was the end of the conversation. Fine, the most dishonest word in the English language. The house itself changed. The old framed photos from our camping trips, mud-streaked. Faces, mosquito bites, real smiles, disappeared from the living room shelves, replaced with sterile magazine-ready decor. Our life, curated and scrubbed clean of anything genuine. Even the dog stopped sleeping at the foot of our bed. He curled up downstairs by the front door instead, like he was waiting for someone else to come home. There were late nights too, more than a few. Cassandra claiming charity galas, committee meetings, networking events. She'd come back smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine, cheeks flushed, hair tousled like she'd run through a hurricane. I'd be sitting on the couch, flipping through channels I wasn't watching, pretending I hadn't been glancing at the clock every 10 minutes. Sometimes she wouldn't even offer an excuse. Just breezed past me with a distracted kiss on the cheek, already texting someone else. I told myself she was just busy. I told myself not to be paranoid. I told myself a lot of things, like a man standing in the middle of a burning house, convincing himself it's just a warm night. I started noticing the credit card statements next. Little charges at places she never used to shop. Jewelry stores, wine bars downtown. Hotel lobbies in parts of the city we had no reason to visit. Once, I asked her about a charge. Just casual, just curious. She smiled that tight, plastic smile. She'd perfected, patted my cheek like I was some confused old man and said, "Work expense, sweetheart, you wouldn't understand." She was right. I didn't. Not then. The final straw was the night I came home early from a security conference in D.C. Flight bumped up because of weather. No text to warn her, no call. The house was dark, no music, no clatter of dishes in the sink. No laughter from upstairs. In the study, the room that used to be mine, I found the safe door ajar. Inside, the documents were scattered. Blueprints, patent applications, defense contracts, all photographed neatly, folder by folder. I didn't touch anything, didn't breathe. I just stood there, the truth sinking into my bones like winter frost. Someone had been here, someone I had let in, someone I had loved enough to trust with everything I had built. The door creaked upstairs, soft footsteps, whispered voices, a giggle, hers, and another voice, a man's, not mine. I slipped out the back door like a ghost, didn't slam it, didn't announce myself, no dramatic confrontations, no righteous fury, just a quiet, brutal understanding. I had been erased from my own life long before I ever saw the proof, and now the only thing left was to decide how much of myself I was willing to burn down with it. The night after I found the safe cracked open, I didn't rage. I didn't storm upstairs and drag them both into the street. I went to work. First thing I did was strip every piece of electronics I owned down to bare bones. Phones, laptops, even the security system, torn apart and rebuilt from scratch. I didn't trust a damn thing anymore. Not the blinking lights. Not the passwords I thought were bulletproof. By sunrise, I had a new phone registered under a fake name, paid for in cash. New laptop, same deal. No ties back to me, no fingerprints. I opened a bank account in a neighboring town under a variation of my middle name. A small credit union, the kind nobody pays attention to unless you're robbing it. I started transferring money out in small, unnoticeable amounts, enough to build a war chest without setting off alarms. At the hardware store, I bought burner cameras, motion sensors, and a high-capacity external drive. No paper trail, no receipts. With my real name. The cameras went up the next night while Cassandra was working late, one in the study, another pointed at the front entry, and two outside near the garage and back porch. Hidden so well that even if you knew to look, you'd miss them unless you were military trained, and neither of them was. Information first, revenge later. I needed proof, not suspicion, not bruised pride. Concrete evidence that no judge could ignore, no lawyer could spin. It wasn't enough to know she was cheating. It wasn't even enough to know she was stealing. I had to prove she was selling me out to the highest bidder, because once the military contracts were involved, this wasn't just about betrayal. It was espionage, a federal crime. And if she thought I would sit quietly while she walked away with half my company and my name in ruins, she hadn't been paying attention all these years. I went through the house next, inch by inch, like I was clearing a hostile zone. Anything that could be used against me, letters, old financial records, keys to safes, vanished. Stored in a rented storage locker 2 towns over. Paid 6 months in advance under another alias. I switched out the locks while she was out one afternoon. Upgraded them to grade 1 deadbolts, the kind used in federal buildings. Only I had the keys. The safe itself I changed too. Upgraded to a biometric system keyed to my thumbprint. The old one, the one she'd breached, got broken mysteriously the next morning. The hinges deliberately wrecked to make it look like a manufacturing defect. She barely noticed, too busy with her secret life. I hired a private investigator. Not the kind you find on Google ads, but a retired Army CID guy who owed me favors from way back. I gave him one instruction: follow the money. Cassandra thought she was clever. People like her always do. They think the silence means you're defeated. They think the absence of shouting means surrender. They never understand the kind of silence that comes before a storm, the kind that builds, low and heavy, until it cracks the sky wide open. In the evenings, I trained harder. Hit the heavy bag in the garage until my knuckles split. Ran 5 miles through the back roads until my legs threatened to give out. Drained the adrenaline so I wouldn't do anything reckless. Control was everything now. Every breath, every step. Every move had to serve the plan, because when the hammer finally fell, I wouldn't be screaming. I would be standing quietly in the wreckage of everything they thought they stole from me, and they would finally understand exactly who they had betrayed. The truth didn't punch me in the gut. It slid the knife in slow, savoring every inch. It started with a simple email. A flagged alert from the hidden cameras I'd installed. The study door opened at 2:13 a.m., a time when no one should have been moving around unless there was a fire or a break-in. I pulled the footage up on the burner laptop, sitting in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner, with nothing but black coffee and bad lighting for company. There she was, Cassandra, barefoot, hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing the old oversized sweatshirt she always claimed was her favorite because it smelled like me. Funny how lies hide in the familiar. She moved with the predator's caution, checking over her shoulder before slipping inside the study. In her hands was a small leather folder. Thin, expensive, businesslike. Not hers, not mine. The grainy footage showed her pulling out documents from my new safe. Contracts, prototype schematics, classified memorandums tied to defense projects. Worth more money than I'd made in my entire career. She photographed each page meticulously, with a sleek silver device no bigger than a lipstick tube. High-grade spy tech, not the work of a bored housewife looking for leverage in a divorce. No, this was something worse. This was industrial espionage, federal prison kind of bad, and she wasn't alone. 30 minutes after she left, a second figure entered the frame, not Madison, not Brandon. A man, dark-haired, cocky, expensive coat slung over one shoulder like he owned the place. Sebastian Cole, the charming interior designer who had helped remodel the second floor the year before. The same bastard who'd shaken my hand at Madison's graduation party and joked about how lucky I was to have such a beautiful family. Watching the footage, I tasted blood in my mouth from how hard my teeth were grinding. He wasn't there to steal anything. No panic, no rush. He moved like he had every right to be there. Cassandra had given him the keys. Hell, for all I knew, she'd drawn him a map. He sifted through the safe like a man browsing a library shelf, took his own set of photos, smirked at the camera once, pure arrogance, before slipping out the same way he'd come in. It wasn't just betrayal now, it was treason. And they were dragging my name, my company, my life's work into the mud, with them. I sat back, hands trembling slightly as I closed the laptop. Outside, the world kept turning, trucks rumbling down the highway, drunks laughing over jukebox songs inside the diner. But inside me, something old and hard locked into place. This wasn't about broken vows anymore. This wasn't about love. This was war. I texted the investigator. Short and simple. Pull everything. On Sebastian Cole, full history, full associates list, priority 1. Then I made a second call, not to a lawyer, not to a private contractor, to a friend in the Department of Defense who owed me a favor from a lifetime ago when bullets flew thicker than mosquitoes and loyalty was the only currency that mattered. The kind of favor that came with black suits and federal warrants, the kind that didn't end in negotiations, it ended in handcuffs. I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the windshield. Not the man Cassandra had married, not the man. Madison used to beg for bedtime stories. Someone colder, sharper, forged in betrayal like steel through flame. There was no saving this, no fixing it with apologies or second chances. Cassandra hadn't just crossed a line, she'd bulldozed it, buried it, and danced on the grave. And when the storm broke, there would be no warnings, no mercy, only judgment, only reckoning, only me. Revenge isn't a moment. It's architecture. It's blueprints and scaffolding and long, brutal patience. I didn't rush it. Rushing gets you sloppy. Sloppy gets you dead. The first move was making myself scarce. I started leaving earlier for work trips. Nothing official, no posted itineraries. Just casual mentions over burnt coffee or distracted mornings. I'll be out of town a few days, I'd say, casual as flipping a coin. Keep the fort down. Cassandra always smiled too brightly, nodding like she couldn't wait for the door to hit me on the way out. Exactly the reaction I wanted. Meanwhile, I was never more than 30 minutes away, holed up in a rented trailer on the outskirts of town, watching everything unfold through secure feeds. She got bolder fast. Sebastian came over the second night I was gone, pulling into the driveway like he owned it, his smug little sports car gleaming under the floodlights. Madison wasn't even home. No pretense anymore. They thought they had time. They thought I was a ghost. I let them believe it. The next piece was trickier. I needed evidence, real evidence, not just shaky video or hearsay, but physical proof that would shred any defense they tried to mount. So, I baited the hook. I left a new folder in the safe. Confidential schematics for a fake defense project, fabricated with just enough jargon and government watermarks to look legitimate. Detailed, believable, completely poisonous. Cassandra found it within 48 hours. I watched on the grainy black and white feed as she rifled through the safe, hands trembling with excitement. She photographed every page, lips moving like she was counting her payday with each snap. Sebastian wasn't far behind. He showed up an hour later, wearing leather gloves like some dime store criminal. I recorded everything, every frame, every whisper, every stolen glance. Then came the final play. I arranged a last-minute dinner downtown with a few business associates. Made sure it was public, made sure Cassandra overheard. And just to really sweeten the pot, I left a burner phone in the study drawer with a single text queued up to send, ready to move the files. Payment confirmation needed first. The kind of message that would make a greedy rat panic. The kind that would make them scramble. While I sat 3 miles away in a cheap diner, nursing bad coffee and pretending to care about the evening news, Cassandra and Sebastian took the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. They broke into my office. Broke. Smashed the lock like amateurs, desperate and sloppy, their fingerprints everywhere. The FBI, tipped off anonymously by yours truly, didn't need long. They were already watching. They were already waiting. By the time Sebastian pulled into the drop site, an abandoned strip mall parking lot, they swarmed him like hornets. Guns drawn, shouts cutting the night open. Back at the house, Cassandra barely had time to wipe the panic off her face before agents swept through the door with warrants hotter than a July sidewalk. The feeds went dark, one by one, as each camera was secured for evidence. I sat in my truck across the street, engine running low, headlights off, watching, waiting. When they led her out in cuffs, she wasn't crying, she wasn't screaming. She just looked hollow, like she finally realized the walls she helped build were now the ones closing in on her. Sebastian thrashed and cursed as they shoved him into the back of a cruiser. Cassandra didn't even fight. She just stared blankly into the flashing red and blue lights, the sirens washing her face in pulsing shadows. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just shifted the truck into gear and pulled away. The trap had been set, and it had snapped shut with brutal, perfect precision. The morning they dragged it all into the daylight, the sky was the color of wet cement, low, heavy, ready to crack. I parked 2 blocks from the federal courthouse, the engine ticking as it cooled beneath the hood. From a distance, it looked almost ordinary. People walking dogs, delivery trucks rumbling by, business as usual. But inside those glass doors, the reckoning was unfolding. Cassandra and Sebastian sat at separate tables, wrists cuffed, flanked by federal agents in dark suits. Their lawyers huddled beside them, whispering like cornered rats trying to gnaw through steel. I slipped into the back row unnoticed. Just another anonymous face in a sea of observers, reporters, and low-level bureaucrats itching for a scandal. The prosecutor, a wiry woman with a voice like cracked ice, laid it out clean. Unauthorized access to classified materials. Distribution of sensitive national security documents. Conspiracy to commit corporate and federal espionage. It wasn't just a crime. It was treason, dressed in designer clothes. The evidence hit the courtroom like hammer blows. Photos, fingerprints, transaction, logs, encrypted messages decoded line by ugly line, page after page, lie after lie. Every fake smile, every careful alibi, every secret meeting while I was out earning a living, trusting the wrong people with the wrong things, it all crumbled under the weight of facts. Cassandra sat rigid, jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. She refused to look at Sebastian. He, on the other hand, couldn't stop glancing over at her like maybe somehow she'd still pull a rabbit out of a hat and save them both. She didn't. When the video from the hidden cameras played, the footage of Cassandra rifling through my files, Sebastian pocketing flash drives, it felt like the air itself thickened. The reporter's pens scratched faster. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. I watched it all in silence, feeling nothing but a deep, detached satisfaction. Not joy, not revenge. Just the cold, clean click of justice snapping into place. Cassandra's lawyer tried to paint her as manipulated, seduced, misled by a career con artist. It was a weak defense. Too many zeros in those offshore accounts she thought I didn't know about. Too many nights she handed over pieces of my life without a flicker of guilt. Sebastian's attorney threw every trick. He had pleading ignorance, blaming stress, claiming misunderstandings. The evidence bulldozed it all. At the end of it, the prosecutor dropped the final nail, a recorded conversation between Sebastian and a foreign operative, discussing payment structures and data delivery timelines. That silenced the room like a gunshot. The verdict was inevitable. I didn't wait for the sentencing. Didn't need to see them break down or cry or beg for leniency they'd never once offered me. I slipped out the back, the heavy oak doors swinging shut behind me with a satisfying thud. Outside, rain finally started to fall, soft at first, then harder, washing the streets clean. I walked without hurry, feeling every drop soak into my jacket, cooling the rage that had burned in me for months. Cassandra would go to prison. Sebastian would rot even longer. Their betrayal had been spectacular. Their downfall was absolute. I reached the truck, leaned against the door, letting the storm hammer away at me. No cheers, no applause. Just the quiet end of something that should have died a long time ago. Above me, lightning ripped across the sky, a flash of raw, savage light. Perfect, I thought. Some things deserve to end under fire. She called once, the day before her sentencing, when the walls finally closed in and the weight of it all crushed whatever pride she had left. I let it ring until the voicemail kicked in. Her voice was shaky, unrecognizable from the woman who used to hold court at every dinner party, laughing like the world belonged to her. "Ethan, please, I need to see you. One last time." No apology, no admission, just need. I deleted the message without listening to the end. There was nothing left to say. I spent that afternoon boxing up what little remained of her presence in my life. Wedding albums, anniversary gifts, that stupid framed photo from the Grand Canyon where we looked like the perfect American family. All of it. I didn't smash it, didn't burn it. That would have given it weight it didn't deserve. Instead, I packed it neatly into a storage unit under her maiden name and mailed her the key with a single note. Not my problem anymore. Final surgical. That evening, I met Madison at a neutral place, a park halfway between the courthouse and the house I no longer called home. She sat on the bench, hands knotted in her lap, mascara smudged under tired eyes. Not the defiant girl who used to slam doors and roll her eyes at every word I said. Just a kid who realized too late the cost of picking the wrong side. When I approached, she stood awkwardly, like she didn't know whether to hug me or apologize. Or just run. I spared her the decision. "I'm not here to fight," I said, voice low. She nodded quickly, swallowing hard. "I messed up, Dad," she blurted. "I thought—" Her voice cracked. "I thought Mom was telling me the truth." I stared at her for a long moment, weighing 1,000 different responses. But there was only one that mattered. "You chose," I said simply. A sob punched out of her. She covered her mouth like she could shove it back in, like she could unsay everything that had led us here. I didn't comfort her. I didn't tell her it was okay, because it wasn't, because some bridges don't burn with fire. They corrode quietly, until one day you step forward, and there's nothing left beneath your feet. "I'm trying to fix it," she whispered. I nodded once, not forgiveness, acknowledgement. "You've got your own road to walk now," I said. "I hope you do better on it." Her shoulders sagged like I'd hit her harder than any slap could. I turned without another word and walked away, boots crunching over dead leaves, heart hammering a slow, steady rhythm of acceptance. No rage, no sadness, just the clean, brutal severing of ties that needed to be cut. Back at the truck, I sat behind the wheel and stared at the keys in my hand for a long moment. This chapter, this wreckage, was finished, and I wasn't dragging it forward with me. I dropped the house keys. Onto the passenger seat, the last physical anchor to a life that no longer belonged to me. Tomorrow the movers would clear it out. Tomorrow the for sale sign would go up. Tomorrow someone else would build memories inside those walls, and I'd be long gone. Not with fanfare, not with victory laps. Just quiet footsteps on a new road, no backward glances, no second chances. Some endings aren't about closure, they're about survival, and I intended to survive. On my terms. Freedom didn't come with a roar. It arrived quiet. A battered Ford pickup, a dirt road carving through nowhere, and a sky so wide. It made the scars on my soul feel small by comparison. I found the cabin by accident. A sagging wooden structure tucked between two ridges in the northern hills, a for sale sign dangling sideways from a rusted nail. The roof needed work. The porch leaned like a drunk at last call. The whole place smelled like dust and pine needles. It was perfect. I paid cash. No forwarding address. No paper trail. Just me, a backpack, and a dog I picked up from a kill shelter. 2 towns over. A grizzled mutt with a torn ear and a heart too stubborn to quit. I named him Chance. The first night we sat on the porch together, the boards creaking under our combined weight. No city noise, no distant buzz of traffic, just the whisper of the wind threading through the trees. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. During the days, I worked with my hands, stripped the roof bare, and rebuilt it shingle by shingle. Sanded the battered floors until they gleamed under the slanting sunlight. Chopped wood, stacked it neatly against the cabin wall, mended the broken fence that circled the clearing. No one told me what to do. No one expected anything. For the first time in decades, I wasn't carrying anyone else's dreams on my back. At night I'd sit by the fire, Chance sprawled at my feet, and read old paperbacks I found in a thrift shop, the kind with yellowed pages and cracked spines that smelled like other people's forgotten lives. Some nights the past would drift in, not memories exactly, ghosts of what used to be a voice here. A laugh there, I didn't fight them. I let them pass through me like river water sliding over stone. They couldn't touch me anymore. I wasn't that man, the man who begged to be seen, who built walls around a home that was already crumbling inside. Had learned the hardest truth of all. Not everyone deserves a second chance. Not every wound needs healing. Some scars are meant to stay, carved deep into your bones so you never forget what survival costs. One morning, after a night of rain that left the air sharp and clean, I found a letter tucked under the cabin door. No return address, no handwriting I recognized. Inside, a simple note: forgiveness is for the living, not the dead. I burned it without reading it twice. Forgiveness was never the goal. Peace was, and I was finally, brutally at peace. Weeks passed, then months. Seasons shifted in ways I had never noticed before. When life was nothing but airport terminals and endless meetings, the first frost came early. Chance learned to chase rabbits but never catch them. The trees bled gold and crimson, and then stood naked under the pale winter sun. I built a life from the ground up, plank by plank, breath by breath. No apologies, no explanations, only existence, only truth. And if you asked me whether it was worth it, losing everything to find yourself again, I'd tell you yes, every goddamn second. What about you? Have you ever had to burn something to the ground just to rebuild yourself stronger? Tell me your thoughts. I'd love to hear your story. And if this one hit home, stick around, because some scars aren't the end, they're just the beginning.